Imagine you really want something. You get excited and you go after it. And once you get closer, you see that there is this solid, high wall in front of it. So you can't get it. And it happens every single time. You want the job, that relationship, success in business, followers on social media, certain lifestyle, but there's always this insurmountable wall right in front of it that makes it unreachable for you. And when we encounter that wall or that obstacle, this is what 90% of us humans actually do. We look at this obstacle in front of us and say, that's it. I really wanted this, but this seems impossible. I can't do this. Like, I don't see a way through it. I'm just this small human being against this endless, strong wall with no resources in my bare hands. How could I ever win this unfair game? And that means we actually take it personally. We feel like life is unfair, like the universe is against us. Why does it always feel like a hustle? But here's what I've learned after years of hitting walls and somehow overcoming them. The difference between people who stay stuck and people who build extraordinary lives is not some luck or talent or even resources or rich parents. At least in many cases, it's not. It's what they do when they hit that wall that is blocking something that they really want. What do they do in that case? Do they turn around or do they start looking for a crack, an opening, a way to get through it or go around it? So today, I want to share something that completely changed my life. It is a mindset shift that turned me from someone who felt helpless at every obstacle into someone who now sees problems and challenges as just fun puzzles to solve. Well, they're not always fun, but at least it is a game. And it is something that I'm mostly confident that I can figure out or win at instead of feeling hopeless. So if you ever felt that kind of wall in front of you, please don't see it as a failure. It is just a stage that we humans all pass through until we build enough confidence that we can overcome them. And if you're 20 or 40 or any arbitrary age and you feel stuck or powerless about something in your life, this perspective might be exactly what you need to hear. And it is not something that you just read in a book or just drops on you one day. For me, it is something that I learned with the experience that I went through over the years in my life. Let me be honest about where I started. When I was 20, every setback felt personal. Something would go wrong, and my immediate thought was, life is unfair. I don't have the tools. I don't have the connections. I don't have the money. Maybe this just isn't for me. And that was my default setting. Obstacle equals stop sign. And here's the thing. It's easy for any of us to stay in that default setting for years or decades and go through our entire lives thinking this way. It's very human of us. Like when we can't get a visa, we accept it. I guess I'm not meant to travel. When we cannot find a job, we accept it. The economy is bad. What can I do? When a relationship ends badly, we accept it. I'm just unlucky in love. So we just give up. We see the wall and we immediately believe the wall is a message telling us to stop. But the wall is never meant as the final verdict. It's just information. It's telling you something in your approach needs adjusting. That's it. The obstacle is not there to stop you. It's to teach you how to overcome challenges in your life and to give you practice. The problem is most of us have never been taught to think this way. Problem solving is not taught in school. It's a skill that you develop through experience, through repeatedly facing obstacles and refusing to accept them as final answers. And that's exactly what I want to explain to you today. How to develop this skill even if you are starting from zero. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. And let me tell you about my first real wall. I grew up in a country of Georgia. And at that time, the idea of studying in Europe was literally just a dream. Something that other people did, maybe some rich kids from my country or other people who lived in Europe and western side of the world, but not someone like me. I had no visa, no work permit, no money, no family abroad, and no connections. And the situation literally looked completely hopeless. I really wanted this and I was dreaming about it, but there was literally no realistic way that I knew of to get it. And everyone around me, like my friends, acquaintances, they all said the same thing. It's impossible. You can't just go to Europe. That's not how it works. And for a while, I believed them. I felt that familiar feeling of hopelessness. But I guess what happened was that my desire to go study in Europe at the age of 22 was so strong that the little voice in my head just kept saying, maybe there's a way, maybe you should still try to do something. So I made a plan. I thought, okay, I will apply to universities and go to Europe as a student. So that was my first thought. And immediately, lots of walls appeared in front of me to execute that plan. I needed a visa to go to any country, so I needed to apply and be accepted by university. I also needed to find specifically studies where tuition was affordable for me. And tuition in Europe, in most countries, was actually pretty expensive. And I knew I would not be able to cover the costs of even the first semester. So I needed to find a state university that didn't cost that much. But here was the next wall. All the state universities' bachelor programs in Europe, in European countries, were taught in local languages like German, Dutch, Polish, and I didn't speak any of those local languages. So I couldn't do my bachelor studies in the state universities because they were not in English. So now I needed to find a bachelor program in English at a state university. So you see how the walls kept multiplying, like one obstacle after another. And that was like looking for a needle in a haystack because the options were extremely limited. And every time I checked the next university or next country, my hope was declining and declining because it just seemed like this was a common pattern and there was no exception to it. Now, most people would probably have stopped at the first wall. Some might have made it to the second one, but by the third or fourth obstacle, probably most of the people give up. However, I had decided something important. I decided to literally examine and see every single inch of that wall until I found even the smallest crack. So here's what I did. After a full day of work, I would come home, open my laptop, and start researching. Dozens of browser tabs open with different university websites, terrible internet connection. I went through hundreds of university websites from Spain to Portugal to Poland and Slovakia, Germany, and usually I couldn't find any clearly stated information on almost any of them about the programs that I was looking for. The websites were extremely confusing, information was scattered, so basically I couldn't find clear answers to all my questions to make sure that my criteria was matched. So I would find a contact email on the website and write them, how much is the tuition? Is this program taught in English? Do you accept Georgian school certificates or would I need extra credits? Because there was also an impediment whether they would accept credits from another country outside EU. Well, most universities never replied, of course. And when they did, the answer was usually no or negative, at least to some of my questions. So I would need to continue the search. And I did this for 12 nights straight. So 12 nights after full work days, sitting at that laptop, sending emails until my eyes became red and burning, reading through the websites and trying to get all the information, reading all the requirements, taking notes, but not because I'm special, but because I just refused to accept that the wall was solid. I knew that there had to be some way to work around this. And finally, after probably going through like 120 universities across the entire Europe, I found 2 matches. 2 exact matches to my criteria. And magically, somehow, both of them were in the same city in Europe, Vienna, Austria. And that was my first crack in the wall. I found all the application requirements. They replied to me. I applied. I passed the exam and the interview at one of them, one of those 2, and I got an official invitation, an acceptance from the university to apply for my student visa. But of course, another obstacle popped up. We actually did not have an Austrian embassy in Georgia. Probably wasn't important enough to open one. So I had to travel to another country just to file the visa paperwork. I literally had to travel 24 hours to Baku, Azerbaijan, just to submit my visa application. And I didn't even know if I would get the visa or not, because they were pretty strict actually. So there was no guarantee. But that's what problem solvers do. And because I had gone through all these obstacles before, I was definitely not going to stop there. So that's the pattern. We just move forward even when we're scared, even when there's no guarantee, even when we're exhausted, and even when we think, why is this another problem now after overcoming all these obstacles behind me? We just keep going until we get through it. So I got my visa. And that was my first lesson. Every impossible situation hides at least one door or one small opening. And it only opens for the person willing to look long enough to find it. So I made it to Vienna. I felt like I'd climbed over the biggest wall of my life. But here's what nobody tells you about getting past one wall or one set of walls. There's usually another one waiting. So I arrived with hope, but hope doesn't pay rent. So the first year in Vienna, I did not have a steady job. The second year, still no steady income. I was doing everything I could think of. I was doing babysitting, giving some private English lessons. I was even flipping old gadgets, basically buying them from my group mates at university and then reselling them on a marketplace just to make a few euros. So every week was a new survival plan. Every week I had to get creative just to pay for my basic expenses. And then I had to do it all over again for the next week and the next one. Sometimes I was getting some student or waitressing jobs here and there, but I didn't have a full work permit, only like a partial student permit. So nobody wanted to hire me properly. It was just temporary positions like summer jobs, but nothing stable. So I had to at least every month, I had to find another income source. And again, it felt like the exact same situation as before. A huge solid wall with no way through it. I just didn't know how to get a stable job. I remember one afternoon very clearly. I had written down 30 phone numbers, like restaurants, cafes, some student jobs, like various mixes of different types of jobs, anywhere that I could possibly make some living. I was sitting on this small park bench in the middle of Vienna, and I started calling them one by one after having called hundreds more before that in the previous weeks. So it was just the continuation of search. I would call them, I would ask them, hey, I saw this job advertisement online. Are you looking for students? I'm available. But as soon as I mentioned that I was from Georgia, that I didn't have a European work permit, I was a non-EU citizen, the answer was immediately, oh no, we don't hire anyone without a full work permit. So, that's a done deal, so to say. So I would hang up and call the next number. Same result. I literally went through the entire list and every single one of them was a no. And as I said, this was not the first day I was trying. For weeks before, I had been going door to door. I was literally going physically there to convince them somehow, to restaurants or cafes, calling them, showing up in person in different places. I was not able to get anything. And I remember on that day specifically, by the time I finished that list of calls, I sat in that park and I cried because I was hopeless. I literally did not know what else to do. I felt completely lost. I had tried everything I could imagine realistically. I didn't even know what else to try. And I think that's okay because we are allowed to feel broken before we can rebuild ourselves and put our things together. But this is a moment where a lot of people quit and give up because it feels draining, it feels exhausting, and honestly, it feels unfair. Like life is unfair. And this is a moment where it feels truly impossible. But again, here's what I've learned. When you've hit the real bottom, when you've really tried everything you can think of, you stop worrying about looking desperate. You just keep knocking on doors. That same evening, I actually had an appointment at a Georgian restaurant. I was already hopeless about it. I was like, this is not gonna work out anyways, but what did I have to lose? So, of course, I went there. And magically, they actually hired me for a summer job. I was ecstatic. Now, it was not a permanent solution, of course, and it was not my dream job, but it was like oxygen when you do not have air. It was enough to keep me afloat for at least 2 or 3 months while I kept searching for the next opportunity. So sometimes the wall doesn't crumble completely, sometimes it just gives you a small breathing hole, so to say, so you can gather strength for the next push. And that was my second lesson. Even when you can't see the full solution, keep moving because small progress is still progress. And you can see the next steps or you can try the next things from there on. 2 years passed after arriving in Vienna. I graduated with my degree in marketing. So now, finally, I could start my real career. Or so I thought. I started applying for jobs. Now in marketing field because I had a degree, so I could work as a professional. I sent hundreds of applications every week after week, month after month. I was not even getting invited to interviews, just silence or polite rejections. I literally remember I would find the name and contact of the recruiter or HR at the company, and I would stalk them and message them personally to increase my chances of standing out and getting an interview. That's how desperate I was, and that's how difficult it was for me to actually get the job. And I was writing motivational letters, which were like super well crafted because I just wanted to increase my chances. But again, it was not working. Another insurmountable wall in front of me. But this time, something was a little bit different because now I had practice. I had done this already a few times before. Now, it still felt extremely shitty and extremely unfair in some respect, but at least I had the confidence that I was gonna figure it out again because I knew the pattern already. You feel helpless for a moment, then start examining the wall, and you, at some point, find an opening. So I stepped back and I started looking at the bigger picture. And that's when I noticed something. I was browsing this job portal, an Austrian job portal, and next to marketing jobs, I was noticing these IT job listings. They were everywhere, and there were thousands of IT job openings. And I just clicked on a few of them out of curiosity because it was so clear that there was a ton of demand for these positions. Now, I couldn't understand a single thing in those job descriptions because there were some technologies and terms that I'd never heard before in my life. So I didn't even understand what you need to know in order to get that job or to apply for it. But the data was loud and clear. There was an absolute abundance of job openings in IT compared to the scarce marketing and business positions that I was desperately applying for. And another interesting thing was the salaries. It was double, sometimes even triple of what marketing jobs paid. And that meant companies were desperate for those people. They were paying premium and they were looking for a lot of IT professionals. So I asked myself a simple question. What if I become what's in demand? What if I learned something that gives me a job guarantee? Many people don't think this way. They study one thing and believe that's the only path. And when that path is blocked, they feel stuck. But I had learned something from my previous walls and obstacles is that you can always learn new skills. You can always change direction. The wall is not telling you to stop. It's telling you to find a different route, to find a workaround, to find a small opening to get through it. and not to just stop there paralyzed or just turn around and go back and give up on whatever you're trying to get. So this is what I did. By this point, I had learned German during those 2 years in Vienna, at least to some degree. So I decided to enroll in an IT bachelor program taught in German. Remember, the bachelor programs were available in local languages, so now I could at least apply for one because I had learned German. So I got in and I was studying programming while still financing my life with those temporary waitressing, summer jobs, and babysitting and stuff like that. So it was hard, but at least I had a very clear plan and I knew that I had found that small opening that I was looking for. Now it was just a matter of getting through it with all my effort. So after just one semester, I got my first ever professional job in Vienna. Since my arrival in the country, this was my first ever, my profession or career related job. It was a part-time internship. I was getting minimum pay. It was even less than my waitressing job, but it was my first most important building block or a stepping stone for my career to gather some experience so that I could apply for actual programming jobs. And I still didn't have a full work permit at that point, so I was happy with whatever I got. And then after 1 year, I got my work permit. And you know what it said on that work permit that I was literally dreaming of since I planned living and studying in Europe? It said the work permit itself was specifically granted for IT engineering skills. So I got the work permit because I studied engineering. And that changed everything. If you want to imagine, it was for me like getting through all these walls, layer after layer, hitting the next one after another, and then finally going through the last one, and then suddenly you have this wide open field in front of you. There are no walls anymore. You finally made it. All of those efforts before paid off. And that was the biggest turning point in my life and career. I never, ever begged for another job again. I never felt that desperate helplessness about employment again. I became a highly demanded professional. My engineering experience was increasing month after month, and I was getting messages on LinkedIn of employers trying to recruit me for new job offers. And the salary was increasing every year. It was just everything that I worked for was finally paying off. I had a stable job, I had a stable income, but I also had a profession that was just incredibly highly demanded and literally changed the trajectory of my life. And that was my third lesson. Walls do not just block you. They redirect you towards skills that literally buy you freedom for the rest of your life. Now, let me tell you what really happened through all of this. Each time I hit a wall, the same pattern repeated. First, I felt helpless. That's natural, that's human. Then I would search obsessively for a crack in that wall, for some kind of opening, some kind of hope that I could get through it. I could get on the other side because something that I really, really wanted was on the other side. And always, without exception, I would find that opening. Sometimes it was faster, sometimes it took me longer, but there was always some kind of opening in that wall that I would eventually always find. So then I would usually squeeze through, usually completely bruised, exhausted, tired, but wiser, stronger, with more experience and more resilience. And here's the key part. Every time the next wall felt smaller, it felt easier, not because the walls got smaller and easier, but because I became stronger and more confident in my own ability to actually overcome that obstacle, to push through it even if I felt desperate or exhausted or even impatient in many cases. So at 20, when something went wrong, I would say, why is this happening to me? Why can't life just be easier? Why can't I just get something that I want without so much effort and difficulty? Why can't I just get it like everyone else? Life is so unfair. But now, when something goes wrong, or I hit a obstacle in my business, in my personal life, whatever it is, my first thought is, okay, interesting. There is something that I really want behind that wall. Let me just figure this out. So now I don't have to fight against it with my bare hands. I can actually leverage some of the things that I can afford already, like hiring people in my business or paying for other people to help me look for those openings and figure it out together. It's almost like a game. Like I expect there's going to be a next challenge because I want to grow. So let me figure out how to do it. I know there is a way. There always is, without an exception. So let me just figure out how to do it. Let me hire people to help me find it, or hire some experts who can give me shortcuts and advice because now I have those resources to invest. And that's not me just being naturally tough or special or creative and just conquering one challenge after another. That's literally just practice and repetition. That's years of those small wins or some bigger wins in my life that was teaching my brain, I've solved these problems before, I can solve this one too. And this is what people mean when they talk about confidence. Real confidence does not come from some affirmations or positive thinking. It comes from proof, like track record. It comes from evidence because you have proof of what you have done, what you went through, what you achieved at the end. And every time you face a problem and find a way through it, you store a tiny piece of evidence in your brain saying, I figured that one out. I can figure things out in the future as well. And if you do this enough times and collect those small wins and just change your perspective from seeing the challenges not as a showstopper where you just turn around and give up, but rather just get creative. What can I do about the situation? How can I actually get what I want without giving up and just convincing myself that I don't want it as much. I'm fine not having it, so I'm just gonna give up and go somewhere else and look for something else. So once you do that enough times, your default reaction changes from panic and stop to planning and strategizing and actually trying. You'll go from helpless to curious because now it's a game for you. Let me figure out how I can tackle this. And eventually you build, we can call it the solver's muscle. And here's the beautiful part. Anyone, literally anyone can build this muscle. It doesn't require any special talent, any special skills or intelligence. It's just a repetition. It doesn't matter if you're naturally tough or naturally soft. It doesn't matter if you're, 19 or 39 or 59. You just have to start training it. So let me give you the practical steps. How do you actually develop this mindset? You start small. That's very important. And that's the secret everyone misses. You don't start by trying to solve massive life problems. Unless you are forced to do so, like I was back in my 20s. But start with smaller things to build that evidence and track record. Like when something breaks, do not immediately ask someone else to fix it. Try to do it yourself. Your laptop is running slow? Google it and try to learn what's causing it. Or your plan for the weekend fell through? Don't just feel disappointed. Replan, find something else. These tiny moments are actually your practice environment or your training ground. The second thing is to name the problem clearly. Like half the battle in problem solving is defining what's actually wrong. Not everything is terrible about the situation, but rather I need 500 euros by next Friday, or I need to learn this skill in 3 months, or I need to fix this specific issue in my personal life. Because clear problems are solvable problems. If you cannot clearly define or formulate a problem, it's really hard to solve it because you're not even sure what you're trying to solve. Third one is write down 3 possible moves, even if they seem stupid. Even if you don't have any breakthrough creative ideas, just try to come up with at least 3 options, even if you don't know if they will work or not. The goal here is not to find the perfect solution immediately. The goal is to get your brain out of paralysis mode and into action and brainstorming mode. The ideas will actually start flowing once you get into that phase. The next one is do one small thing immediately. Send one email. Send one message. Make one phone call. Research for 15 minutes. Because action builds momentum faster than just thinking and going through it in your head. Always. Because action is like taking a step in the dark so that you can feel the next step. And then the next one, and the next one. Because if you never take that first step, you're not going to know just by thinking about it what's in front of you when everything is dark. So you need to literally try and stumble through to figure out what the next steps are going to be. The fifth one is review what worked. So when you solve something, just take a moment to reflect on it and to notice what did you try, what worked, and why. And you can write it down if you want. Like, I was stressed about something, about this thing, I tried this, and it worked. Because every solved problem becomes evidence for the next one. Think about it like building your own personal database of proof that you can handle things. And do this just for a month and see what happens. I promise you, you will notice something shift. You will feel calmer when problems appear. You will feel faster at finding solutions, and you will feel more creative under pressure. And that's your solver's muscle getting trained. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Once you start solving problems consistently, something magical happens. You attract resources. People notice. They start trusting you more. They bring opportunities to you. Like, hey, you are really good at figuring things out. Can you help me with this? And with opportunities come money and success. And money brings something invaluable, which is freedom. And freedom is not about luxury. It's not about buying expensive things. Freedom is most importantly about choices. When I started my own company, I used that freedom to design resilience into my life. I can hire an operations lead who keeps things running if I'm away, or if life throws me a curveball and I need someone to kind of hold the ground. I can now invest in tools, in training, in people, things that make the next problem easier for me to solve. Remember, I mentioned at the beginning, you don't have any resources, you're fighting with your bare hands. It's like a video game, right? The more you advanced, the more tools you actually get. Maybe you hire a team of people. So now you're not alone against this problem. You can actually use and leverage resources to help you figure out stuff. And for me, that's actually wealth. That's your support system. So you're not fighting challenges alone in your life. You actually have the entire tool set and people who can help you with stuff. And again, that makes the next problem easier to solve. I can now choose to take a risk because I have a buffer. I can choose to say no to things that don't serve me. And that's not luck. There was intentional design because I wanted to work towards that. And that's what happens when you become someone who solves problems one by one and builds that muscle and figures things out instead of someone who gets stopped by them and retreats immediately. And the resources compound, the confidence compounds, the freedom compounds. And it's crazy to think that it all started with that first decision back in Georgia to look for a crack in the wall that seemed completely unconquerable instead of accepting that wall as final. Here's what I want you to remember. People literally solve rocket science problems. People heal from disasters. People rebuild entire cities after they've been destroyed. So if the thing in front of you looks impossible right now, remember that someone somewhere has faced worse challenge and found a way through it. There's always an opening. Always. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes you have to look at the wall for 12 nights straight to find it, but it's always there. And when you believe that, like really truly believe it, something fundamental shifts in how you move through the world, how you approach these challenges, because now you're confident that you're going to find the opening because you know it's there. It's just a matter of time. And you stop feeling like a victim of circumstances, and you stop waiting for life to get easier or for someone to rescue you. You become the designer of your own life. And the moment you believe that everything is figure outable, that's not a word, but still, everything starts to change. Your approach to problems will change. So if a girl from Georgia with no visa, no money, no connections, no special advantages could figure out how to get to Europe, survive there in one of the most expensive cities, reinvent her career, and build freedom, then you can figure out your next problem too. Whatever wall you're facing right now, it's not solid. It just looks solid from where you're standing. Step closer, start looking for cracks and openings. Ask better questions. Try small things. Keep moving. The wall will surrender at some point. Not because walls are weak, but because you are stronger than you think. And each time you prove that to yourself, you become even stronger. So do not accept that anything is impossible. Do not accept that you are powerless when facing challenges that feel way larger than your skills or your strength. Because once you start looking for solutions instead of reasons to stop and give up, once you train yourself to see problems as puzzles instead of just prison walls, the world literally opens up in front of you. And that's the mindset that turns fear into the sense of control over your own life. And remember, problems do not disappear. They will always be there. You just get better at solving them. And once you believe that, there is no situation in life that can trip you for long. Now, I hope this video gave you motivation, inspiration for whatever challenge you're facing. If it really helps you take action and you see results, come back to this video, leave your story below, and share it with others for inspiration as well. As always, thanks for watching and see you in the next video.